Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of my tutorial of dogs in graphite. Now this one is going to be all around noses. I'm sure you've come across a nose in graphite before and just thought, how am I going to even start with this? There's so many different shapes, crevices, shadows, highlights, everything you can think of, all in one really small area. But I'm going to try and break it down step by step and make it quite simple. I have got an easily traceable outline in the description below, so download that, use it as you wish, and the reference photo is also going to be down there. So if you do want to follow along, please feel free, and if you do get something from this video, let me know in the comments. I really enjoy reading your comments. So without further ado, here's the video. And this will be the final result of today's session. I'll just quickly run over the tools that I'm going to be using, and I have the Faber Castell 0.5 mechanical pencil, and I've got a 2B lead in there. For the darker sections, I have a 6B pencil, an F pencil, which is just going to be for the lighter areas, a cotton bud for blending, and my silicone colour shaper blending tool. I've also got a Jelly Roll 0.8 just for the really fine specks of highlight. I've got a brush to rub away any rubbings out, and this is a rubber pencil from Faber Castell. Sharpener that I use to get a really fine point, it's just a plain metal sharpener, really cheap, and you can just keep changing them so you can get a really sharp point to your pencil, which is what we need for those tiny details. This is how much I'm actually zoomed in on that reference photo. Now if you have a photo sent to you that is this high quality, then that's absolutely amazing and it's going to be a fun drawing for you. I probably wouldn't accept a photo that was lower quality than this, to be honest. You're just going to shoot yourself in the foot if you're accepting reference material that isn't doing you any favours, because it's going to make an example of your work to other people, and if you aren't taking on commissions with the right references, then you're just not going to be doing yourself any favours. But yeah, as you can see, I can see all of these little hexagonal patterns within that nose. So they're like little canyons. They've got a shadow on one side and a highlight on the other. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going in with a B pencil. And this is a nice, actually no, I'll tell you what I'm going to do first. Take my 6B, and I'll start off by just entering in the darkest shadows that I could see. Don't press too hard on the pencil because you'll end up getting really shiny paper, which I don't actually mind, but a lot of people don't. So you can avoid that as much as possible by doing layers rather than pressing really hard. I tend to do a bit of both. Now at the bottom, the shadow doesn't end abruptly. It kind of fades into the bottom of that nostril. Very slight highlight in there where the skin of that nostril is still visible, so I'm just rubbing a bit of that away. And going into the other side. If you really zoom in on your reference, you'll see that this dark shadow isn't actually a smooth line. There's little bumps where the pattern of their nose is kind of going into the nostril, and the shadow is spilling out into the little crevices. So there we have our two darkest values there, and I'm also going to fill in the central line, which is usually the darkest place as well. I like to enter in a little bit of the fur around the nose before I start the nose, just to give a little bit of context. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with the B, or maybe the F. I can never decide between these two. I think I'll use the F actually, just to get an idea first. And I'm just going to go in with the mid-tone, the basic main shadow on the nose. So I'm just going in small circles, keeping an even pressure. I'm kind of using a mid pressure here. Not too light, because you do want to get the pigment down. But not too hard either, because these lighter grade pencils can make a dent in the paper if you go too hard, because the leads are quite hard. I've seen people using the Faber Castell matte pencils recently. Really want to try them out, but they're meant to not have as much shine as their normal pencils. I think they have a percentage of carbon in them, so they're a bit more black. So I'll be interested to try them out soon. But as I said, I really do like the shine of graphite. Kind of just looks like silver to me. And I've never had a complaint about it before from any customer, so don't worry about it. This side of the nose is darker than this side because that side of the face has a slight shadow. The light source is coming from this side, but it's not too drastic. But we do want to keep a note of where the light's coming from, as that will really inform the highlights and shadows on the texture of the nose as well. I'm going to leave these small highlights completely white. Don't want to muddy them up with any graphite so that they stay really punchy. So I'm just going around them. Really thinking about my 10 scale value system here. If you don't know what that is, it's basically, as artists, we have to separate all the different tones we see with our eyes. I think there's like 1 million that we see with our eyes. We have to simplify it down to a scale that we can recreate. So a lot of artists use the 10 value system, which is just a scale of 10 different shades of colour, shades of tone. And you can compare that to different places, so it gives you the true value of that colour, of that shade. Because our eyes can be really deceived by colour. I keep saying colours because I'm used to drawing with colour pencils. Our eyes can be deceived by shades that are next to each other, so it can, whatever's next to that colour might make it seem darker or lighter. For example, the shadow that I'm doing here in the reference picture is, well, it looks like a highlight here because it's against this darker shadow, but it's actually the same colour as the mid-tone shadow, which is here. But because it's next to a shadow, we can sometimes be inclined to do it lighter than it really is. Really take a note of that, it's going to make you produce some more realistic art. I'm going to use a higher grade pencil to go over this. I'm just really mapping out where the shadows are going. Kind of going in the direction of the skin here as well. Wraps around. It's not a 2D shape, it's a 3D shape. So it's wrapping around that area. Just erasing some bits that I've gone over. And just doing the same thing on the other side. If I see any really dark kind of crevices in the nose, I will just enter them in whenever I see them. Make sure I keep track of their position. Hope you're enjoying this real-time footage, guys. It's the first time I've probably done a real-time one so far for YouTube. I'm thinking about doing a Patreon soon, so I'll be doing lots more real-time videos. The only problem is I can't really talk while I draw. I get too into it and I can't speak at the same time. So I probably will end up doing voiceovers, but that ends up taking hours and hours, obviously. So I'm curious to know what people like best when it comes to Patreon content. Because I know that what I look for on a Patreon is the artist talking, whether that be a voiceover or talking as they go, because I like to listen to them while I'm drawing myself. So I don't really like it when people are silent, but I get why they are because it's quite hard to draw at the same time. So yeah, let me know what you prefer in a Patreon channel. Been meaning to open one for ages. But it's quite a lot of pressure, isn't it? monthly content. I'm trying to get regular on YouTube first so I can trust myself with people. Obviously paying you is a lot more pressure to be regular. But I think that's also a good thing. It keeps you accountable. But as I say, I'm going to get regular on YouTube first, and then I'll probably open it at the beginning of next year. And I'm going to build up some content on there before I open it, so that people joining have a library of stuff to browse. Library. You get what I mean. So I'm just building up, layers on layers. And once we're finished with this mid-tone layer, we're going to blend it to make it nice and smooth. So I'm now going in with the 4B. I'm kind of just mapping out where they're going, the shadowier areas. And just blending out the outsides of it a little bit so that it doesn't look so square. Sometimes the shape of it can look a bit weird until you've done the outside areas. Sorry, I'm jumping back and forward a bit, but I'm going back to that F pencil because I'm trying not to let myself jump in and out of stages for the sake of this video. Dogs usually have these two little crevices on their nose at the bottom, which I never noticed until I started drawing them. My eyes are flicking back and forward to that reference every 1 second, I'd say. I'm probably looking at the reference more than my actual drawing. Really observing those shapes. And the noses normally have some bounce light that comes from the ground. So this is what we see in these little highlights in the lower area. The highlights within the shadow. It's really hard to actually look at the reference photo and all of the little pattern details in it and not want to go straight in with them. It can help some people to blur the reference photo so you're not instantly looking and distracted by that detail, which I usually do with my coloured portraits because I'm a little bit less experienced with them. Helps your eyes to see the values better. Also kind of focusing on the dog's character as well. Even within the nose there's a lot of character. So don't lose your connection with the subject. Just going to fill in a bit more shadow down here. So I'm just going to really loosely blend that out. I'm going to get a new cotton bud because this one is a bit dirty. Just using like medium pressure and going in really small circles. Avoiding those highlights. Now as you can see, the form of the nose is starting to come together. I'm now going to go in with my silicone blending tool and just really smooth it all out. Had to go into time lapse now because my phone was running out of memory. So yeah, I'm just going in with the 6B pencil now and adding in some shadows in the darker areas, really looking at that reference photo to pick out where your shadows are going to be. And I'm just using those same little tiny circular motions with that 6B pencil. Normally on dogs' noses they are like in a room or something, and there's some bounce light coming up from the ground which reflects off the bottom of the nose. So any shadow that you're doing in the kind of centre of that little bit there would kind of taper off towards the bottom of the nose where that bounce light is coming up. So just keep that in mind and look for it in your reference photos. So yeah, pretty simple. All I'm doing here is reinforcing the shadows where I can see them, as I said, and then going in with the silicone blending tool just to really smooth everything out, stop everything looking a bit grainy. The paper I'm using here is a really old paper that I got a set of about 200 sheets of it when I started doing commissions about 10 years ago, and it's lasted me this long because I only used it for commissions. And it's just such a perfect paper. It doesn't pill up, it takes so many layers, takes all the blending, but it doesn't have a brand on it. So it was literally just a pack of card I got from a craft shop when I was about 13. But yeah, I'm really gutted because I've just run out of that paper now. So I think I'm going to move on to the Strathmore Bristol board, but the only thing I don't like about that for pet portraits is that it's cream toned. I quite like that for human portraiture because it gives a kind of sepia look, but I prefer a bright white one for pets. So I am still looking for some papers that I like. Right, and we are on to the detail now. Just to warn you, I looked through this video and I was so annoyed because I'm realising that the camera kept focusing on my hand rather than what I was doing on the paper. So I'm really sorry if that bothers you. Hopefully you can still see what I'm doing well enough. So I'm just going in with my 0.5 Faber Castell Mechanical Pencil. Now these pencils are so good for getting those fine details. I haven't found anything that's just as good, rather than you don't have to sharpen it all the time, which is great. So I'm zoomed right into my reference as you saw, and I'm just getting freehanding those shapes in, those little hexagonal patterns. And one of the keys here is to not make every single shape the same size and just not the same shape, because otherwise it will start to look quite artificial. Now, even though this is such a detailed area, I'm not actually looking at the reference photo that much. I'm not worrying too much about the shapes being exactly the same as the reference, because it's not like your customer's going to be zooming in on the reference photo and checking that all your shapes on the nose are the same. But yeah, so you can kind of just freehand your pattern, and once you've got the hang of that texture, you can just keep going. And it'll end up looking something like this. Speeding this up because it's not that fun to watch. One thing to note is that towards the so the front plane of the nose where the shadows are off is facing towards you, whereas the top of the nose where the highlight is going back in perspective, I suppose. So those shapes are going to be a little bit foreshortened. Sorry, I'm so bad at explaining this. Hopefully you can just watch what I'm doing and see. But yeah, if you're not used to doing this pattern, really look at your reference photo and try and do the shapes the same. Maybe do like a really zoomed in focus study rather than working on the whole nose, just to really get a feel for the shapes on a dog's nose. So they're quite unique. Imagine if we had these on our noses. So now I'm going in with the Faber Castell Pink Perfection Eraser Pencil. I love these for doing this just because you can sharpen them to a really fine point. I haven't here, but they're just perfect for these really small highlights. The white one is meant to be for graphite and the pink one is meant to be for colour pencil, but I find the pink one picks up the graphite a little bit better than the white one when there's quite a lot of layers on the paper. So I do like to use the pink one most of the time. And here I'm just reinforcing some of those little crevices with a darker pencil, picking up where the shadows are. So the light source is coming from the left side as you're looking at the paper. So I'm doing a kind of slightly darker line on the right side of the shapes. This is so confusing, isn't it? Now I'm just softening it all out with a silicone blender and just going over those little lines in places. As you look at your reference photo, you'll see that there's some little like pathways within the shapes that are a bit darker. It's almost like they're a bit deeper in the nose, like little squiggly bits. So that's what I'm trying to convey here. So there's the white eraser that I was talking about. I do kind of just flip between the both of them, they're both as good as each other really. So we're going back and forwards between using that rubber to pick out highlights and then using a really sharp pencil to go back in with the shadows in between the crevices, really carving it out, making it look really sharp. You don't want to, though, get lost in the detail and stop paying attention to where your values are, because then you'll lose the form of the nose, which is the most important part. The details are just like the cherry on top. So here I'm going in with a Jelly Roll pen in 0.8 size. I prefer the 0.5 one, but I found they run out so fast, so I've resorted to using the 0.8. And I'm basically just really paying attention to where the light is hitting the nose, and then I'm highlighting that side of each shape, each hexagonal shape, whilst also taking into account like whereabouts on the highlight they are. So for example, the ones that are further back, they won't be as sharp because they're more in the highlight altogether rather than just one side of the shape being highlighted, if you get what I mean. I just absolutely love these pens for adding tiny highlights. I don't know what I did without them, to be honest. Yeah, they're just really great. Continuing this until all of the ones that I can see in the reference that need to be highlighted are highlighted on one side. It might look a little bit artificial at this stage, but we are going to blend it all in together after this, just to make it look a bit more natural. This looks really nice from afar as well, because the detail is just as intense close up as it is further away, so yeah, it's a really nice effect you get. Here it is a bit further away, and as I just said, I'm taking that cotton bud which has already been used to blend some graphite, so it's got some graphite on it, and I'm just using it to soften up those highlights. The Jelly Roll is dry now, so don't do this when it's wet still, because you'll just smudge it everywhere, but it dries in about a minute fully, so you can go in with the cotton bud pretty quickly. And I'm just making sure that everything's kind of uniform, there's no highlights that are just sticking out in the wrong place kind of thing. And now I'm just really sharpening up those bottom highlights, making sure that the places that are sharp look sharp with a sharp pencil. And just going in to bring out some more of those shadows in the crevices that might have been lost in the process. I always get to this point and I'm like, I'm probably done at this point, but I'm just going to continue anyway, every time. Here I'm kind of shading in the shapes where there's too much highlight. You can just go back over the Jelly Roll, no problem. Back in with the cotton bud, just softening it all out. And here it is with the rest of the portrait. As you can see, it looks really effective, I think. And now I'm just going to be making the very final touches, going in with that mechanical pencil again to get some really fine shadows, really carving out those shapes. Going in for the final time now with the Silicone colour shaper from Jackson's Art, just to really soften out any bits that need softening. And I'm just checking that the form is all still correct as well. And here it is with the rest of the portrait, guys. I really hope you got something from this. Don't forget the reference picture in really high quality and a really easily traceable outline is going to be in the description. Some download links should be down there. And yeah, I'd really love to see it if you do use this tutorial in any way. With the easy trace outline, just put it up to your computer screen and it'll be a really quick trace, just so you can get on with the detail methods. But yeah, I really hope you like this, guys. Let me know if you did, as always, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.